Hey, it's Soul. I'm not exactly sure how well this video is going to turn out, but what I'm going to do today is give some thoughtful feedback on dragon riding. I'm not exactly going to be talking to you though, my beloved viewer. I'm going to read off feedback that I'm also going to post on the WoW Alpha forums. I'm going to do my best to back this up with footage too, so feel free to watch, and as usual, hit the like button and subscribe to support the channel, and let's go. Dear Warcraft developers, dragon riding is fast, and maybe too fast for some. I have some feedback and suggestions on how it can be better without sacrificing the overall speed and fun of dragon riding. In fact, it might be more fun if you give this a read, and a kind of a TLDR is towards the end. Dragon riding overall has been fantastic. It's felt great, tearing through the skies and experiencing Warcraft like never before, especially in a world like the Dragon Isles and using design techniques never used before. There are lots of folks, including myself, who have posted their experiences on social media. A lot of it has been about the speed and wonder of darting around obstacles and racing with friends or against themselves. Here, though, I want to give feedback on the more practical and everyday use of dragon riding in the future because, so far, I think that side of things has been a bit understated. It's one thing to ascend to the air and to watch the entire spectacle, but like all things, the spectacle will eventually give way to what is routine, and that's the angle where I'm coming from. Dragon riding feels great when traveling from, generally point A to point B. Examples would include finishing a quest and then returning to the quest giver. 5 to 10 seconds of dragon riding can cover a lot of distance, and I speculate that later, between perks and vigor, nearly any destination can be reached with a single liftoff. When moving between sub-objectives, that's where this comfort starts to break down. Examples of this would be in the middle of a quest, and I want to jump between packs of mobs. Now, in this case, dragon riding isn't encouraged anyway because you're more likely to jump into trouble or to just overshoot your next objective. So, in a way, there's less control. And really, this situation is not the end of the world. Gamers are going to be gamers. Players they'll naturally teach themselves to not fly in those situations based on the strengths and weaknesses of dragon riding. So at worst, it's like a minor issue, but its improvised movement is where I think dragon riding is going to feel the most awkward. Now, I don't see this as a critical failure, but I think this is a basis where improvements could be made. So what do I mean by improvised movement? Well, it's when the player is looking for something. For example, let's go back to questing, where you might need to kill 10 or so mobs, and they're spread across an area that's larger than what a ground mount could easily cover. I found that more than a few times I would be seeking out faraway mobs from the air because, well, everything's dead. It's the typical I'm trying to find the remaining mobs sort of situation. So I'm trying to cover as much distance as I can as fast as I can, only to end up usually flying past my targets. Even at low speeds, I'm going too fast to just turn on a dime, and when trying to get to that target, sometimes I'll end up landing awkwardly. And this might end up being fatal for non-tank specs. Handling this situation can be done in a number of ways that have nothing to do with dragon riding, I imagine, such as adjusting the rates that mobs spawn. That way, as a player, I don't get tempted to hop onto my mount, and I just zip around looking for mobs, and I'd stick to the ground. Another example of improvised movement would be when I'm hunting and gathering. It's the same difference pretty much. If I'm seeking out herbs or ore to gather in non-specific places, by the time I would see it on my minimap, I've passed it. There's a certain response time between seeing something on a minimap, translating that to what I see on the ground, and then changing course to collect it. Instinctively, I've got to pitch up to slow down, which moves my camera up, circle back around, and find my bearings by moving the camera back down again without pitching to maintain my hover, and then finally, again, pitch back down to find a safe place to land, hoping that I don't end up speeding back up again and again overshooting the target. Compared to regular flying, where I can hover like a helicopter, dragon riding doesn't allow for these small or precise movements. Flying up to a ledge for a screenshot is much harder to pull off with dragon riding than on a regular mount, which, by the way, could just hover in place anyway. I think people who have a more difficult time with camera and orientation control are going to have a much higher learning curve to overcome. I can't speak to all of those challenges personally, but I trust that that's going to be problematic. The solutions I'm suggesting are to give the player more control over their dragon while keeping the natural feel of dragon riding. The first is to let players control their maximum speed via ability toggle, a button that lets them switch between the full 930% movement speed and the 640% speed Dracthyr currently have would be one tool to add to the player's arsenal. This sort of cruising speed would be more suited for farming, giving users more time to respond to things that pop up on the minimap. It would give players who struggle with the top speed of dragon riding to have a lower top speed that they can more easily control. Imagine going from point A to point B. Players are tearing through the map at max speeds, and as they get closer, they can let up on the gas a little bit, slow down to give them an extra few seconds to decide where to land. Or not, they can, stick to their top speed and crash into things like a meteor. The point is giving players that choice. I imagine that using the ability while at top speed will immediately knock your speed down as if one were downshifting, but toggling the ability again will allow you to regain that speed if you're at that angle of building velocity. The second suggestion is to have a sort of air brake that players can press to slow their riding speed down to the minimum speed just short of where they would start losing altitude. There's no need to stop on a dime necessarily, but this helps to alleviate those situations where players are like, okay, I'm here, now where's a good place to land? Dragon riding should have a way to throttle. Like, imagine all those movies and shows where the big flying dragon or winged demon or angel or whatever, they enter the scene and they almost stop in place before finally descending on the rabble below them. I'm sure there's more than one Blizzard cinematic to draw inspiration from, and if players could do that themselves, that would be very cool. And from a gameplay sense, that gives the time for players to kind of breathe for just a moment before landing, or changing course in case they overshot. So even if I'm moving at 930% speed, I can slam the brakes down to the minimum. And from there, I can pivot my direction to kind of change course, pitch down to regain speed, use a vigor ability to do whatever, or let my speed fall to 0 and start descending. Overall, I think that the speed aspect of dragon riding is great. Between the Dragon Isles environments and the races being set up, it's clearly balanced toward this particular max speed, and I don't want that to change. But in a way, it also feels like we're flying a train and crash landing into our destinations most of the time. Dragon riding can easily feel out of control for players who are not comfortable with high-speed movement and or constant movement, because this is unlike anything that we've had before in World of Warcraft. Adding a button to adjust maximum speed will give players who want it a more manageable cruising speed that still gets them where they need to go. By also adding air brakes, it gives players that momentary pause to check their surroundings before either landing or changing direction, and I think it has the potential for looking really cool. And it sounds like skidding into the scene would just feel really, really cool. I feel strongly that these two abilities should be added to test as soon as possible in order to make dragon riding feel better and more accessible to all of World of Warcraft's players. And that's it, folks. Thanks for listening, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.